Hello, my name is Beadsy Wu, and I work at the Annie E. Casey Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to learn more about equitable implementation through the example of Youthrive in the SSIR article, Youth Leadership in Action. The article describes how youth and young adults help develop and implement a new initiative, Youthrive, that addresses the challenges young people face in foster care. I'm joined by two of the article's co-authors, Elliot Hinkle and Leonard Burton, who will now introduce themselves. Elliot?
Hello, my name is Elliot Hinkle. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a consultant that is focused on child welfare, the LGBTQ community, and mental health. As a young professional, I have lived experience in the child welfare system, and I'm a Youthrive trainer and advisor. Leonard?
And I'm Leonard Burton. I use he, him pronouns. I work at the Center for the Study of Social Policy as a senior fellow. I work on our systems change team, which include Youthrive. I also do a lot of work around equity, inclusion, and justice, and honored to be an author, a co-author with Elliot on this project, along with my colleague, Steve Cohen at the Center for the Study of Social Policy.
Well, thank you both for joining me. Elliot, very briefly, what is Youthrive and what is it designed to do?
Yeah, Youthrive is both a research-informed framework on youth well-being and an action-oriented initiative that's based on the framework. It's designed to better support healthy development and promote well-being for youth in several jurisdictions and with partners across the country. But I think it's important to note, too, that while it can help young people in foster care, it's really thinking about what do all young people need to thrive.
Thank you. Leonard, given what Elliot has just described, what core elements of equitable implementation helped put this initiative into action?
The Youthrive framework, we've intentionally positioned it to focus on young people as agents in their own lives, as opposed to actors. We always have worked with young people in different aspects in child welfare, but it's important that we hold on to this mantra that young people use. Nothing about us without us. It's important that they're at the center of what's working for them and that the things that they need to thrive. So we practice a shared power approach as we work with them and learn from young people.
Elliot, what did it look like to disrupt power structures on the ground from your perspective, and what benefits did you see?
Yeah, I think disrupting power structures looked like a lot of things throughout the Youthrive journey. And I think Youthrive started by being informed by some of the research that was done on young people. And they wanted to bring in young people pretty early in the process, just not, it didn't happen right at the beginning. But they wanted to know from the young people, what are the kind of core values that we should have? What's important to this work? So really trying to get young people's voice in there early to inform how it should look. I think relationships were also a really big part of the work. And so having good, authentic, and transformational relationships with the young people, with the professionals that were working with these young professionals. It felt authentic and young people could say what they needed to say and give feedback, such as going to a site visit for an exemplary initiative and being able to say, you know, I don't think this program is what we're looking for. I might not use this program. So I think for me, when I also did trainings, having the ability with a co-trainer to say what parts of the training I wanted to do or what we might change about Youthrive as we're actively doing that work. That's pretty much what I would say there.
And Leonard, what were some of the benefits from your perspective?
So some of the benefits, we're hearing the voices and having the voices of young people right next to you. Not just their voices, but their bodies, and sharing the space with them, because young people will hold you accountable for what you think about them. You know, Elliot won't let me get away with saying something that's inconsistent with who they are and what they need. And I expect Elliot to hold me accountable if I misrepresent them. And so at Youthrive and CSSP, what we wanted to do was to change the narrative about who young people are, what they need, and how people in their lives interact with them and support their healthy development and well-being. And so it's very easy for those of us who sit in different state agencies or in philanthropy or in community-based organizations or research and policy think tanks like CSSP to have an idea about what young people need and want. And then to sit at our desk and to write all of that out. But it's much more powerful when you're doing the work doing that type of work alongside young people. Young people, they're the truth tellers, and they hold us accountable. So there's this quality assurance that's built into the process by the nature of you working side by side with them.
Well, I'd like to open this up to both of you to talk about challenges to equitable implementation and specifically disrupting power structures. I think we all know this isn't easy and that it involves a lot of learning as you go. What challenges did you encounter and how did you manage them?
Yeah, early on, I think for Youthrive, it seemed to be deciding when is the right time to bring in young people to inform the work, and should it have happened sooner, and how do you work with that in hindsight? I think one challenge is also when we bring in young people, I think some of the considerations that Youthrive staff had were how do we make sure we're paying young people well for their time? What does that look like? And even if it's hard to do that, it's worth sticking with it because it's worth figuring out how to make sure young people know that they are valued and supported for their time. I think it's also being prepared in trainings for what the response might be from trainees and having the ability to decide for myself, when do I want to share about my lived experience, and being prepared for the response from those trainees. I think disrupting power structures really showed up for Youthrive, for youth, when giving young professionals who have lived experience the power to craft a curriculum for young people. This was Youthrive for youth. To say, you get to do this, but some of the challenges that really showed up were being clear from the onset. What does that mean? How much autonomy do you have and power and control? What does the contractor have to say to do, such as CSSP, to change or edit the curriculum and have the final say?
Yeah, Elliot, so in terms of collaborating with young people, and in the case of the Youthrive for youth curriculum development that you just talked about, we learned how important it is to negotiate bilateral decision-making authority with clarity and transparency early in any engagement with young people. Holding on to power and unilateral decision-making may make adults feel like they're moving a product or a process along the way, but at the same time, it can arrest the development of young people. It can discourage them on their journey. So I think most organizations struggle with that, but as you're talking about shared power, BG, it is incumbent upon adults and organizations to get outside of their social control and trust that young people are developing their skills. And along the way, this is where you can assist in their professional and personal development.
Yeah, I would also add that we talked about it a little bit in the paper, but even the dynamic for me as a white queer young person coming into a space to give back to feedback to my peers of color who were creating this curriculum, and the dynamics that creates for CSSP to ask a young person to give that feedback, but the dynamic of I have some power over my peers. And so in reflection, that was something important for us to be thinking about, and that we're still learning, that we haven't fully figured out how to disrupt all the power structures, but I think we've made a start at that, knowing that it's not a simple process.
Yeah, and being intentional, that's right. And being intentional about dismantling the power structure. We may not have figured it all out, to your point, but there has to be some intentionality and willingness to dismantle those power structures as they arise, as these issues come forth along the journey.
We've come to the last question for this brief conversation. If you could give one piece of advice to a group that wanted to do something similar, what would that be? Elliot, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think I would say that by involving young people meaningfully and authentically, there's a certain credibility to the work that you do and you create something different, but it's substantively different. There's a value that's added that we wouldn't really know what Youthrive would be without youth, and I'm not sure that we want to know what it would be without youth. And so knowing that it's worth doing the hard things and going through the growing pains, because what comes out of that is something really meaningful and valuable to the people it's meant to serve.
Yeah, Elliot, I would suggest to folk that you enter this work with truth and justice in mind, and understanding that truth and justice can and should come from the constituent group in which you say you want to help.
Thank you both. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, BT.